Ladies and gentlemen, please silence your phones and hush your babies. The show is about to start.
I offer my personal welcome to this
Nemo
and Cole conference
halftime
show.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Nemo and Co conference halftime show. It is Sunday, which means we're almost at the end of conference, which means I almost get to sleep. If you thought, where's the jumper? Where's his pajama top gone? It's right here. It's the special conference jumper, or sweater as you would call it in America. And that, along with jammy Dodgers of the raspberry variety, are what's keeping me going through this interesting conference, shall we say. But you don't care about that. You care about Jesus, Joe, or Russell. So let's put that on. Jesus on 57, Joe on 7, Russell on 46. Jesus kind of stormed away a little bit, thanks to some talks which we will get to. And who's that in the corner just below me, who I've muted the mic of, and I'll unmute now? That's Julia.
Hi.
Hey, Julia.
Hi.
So Julia, from Analyzing Mormonism, that I've worked with on Mormon stories before, and just general all-round amazing researcher, has joined me for this session and has suffered through the last 2 hours of conference to help me commentate on what's going on. Does that sound about right, Julia?
Well, I've been watching it the whole time, so.
Oh, okay.
So just
Yes.
being on here is just fun.
Yeah, you've been posting some little roundups, haven't you, on Instagram and stuff?
Yeah.
So go
Yeah.
check those out, because if you thought this was a good roundup, you do that in what? How long are those?
They're like, I try to keep it under 3 minutes, so yeah.
You know, someone's stealing my crown as the chief of brevity. It's got to that time in the weekend where I can barely talk properly. So let's just get on with it, shall we? The first talk. Oh, my predictions. Before we say anything else, my predictions. My predictions were all spot on again. If I get up the predictions as I wrote them on my phone, my seer stone, I said that Uchtdorf would say, please come back to church. It would be a please come back to church type talk, and it absolutely was. I said that Cook would refer to Nelson's last talk. He absolutely did. Through the framework also of an L. Tom Perry address. And that Ballard would talk about the new Preach My Gospel. But Ballard, I think he realised I was making predictions, clearly, nothing to do with his eyesight, and decided that he was going to go off script entirely. Because he did indeed go off script. He got up there and made a joke about how his eyesight wasn't that good, and how he couldn't see the teleprompter anymore, so he was going to have to wing it. And boy, oh boy, should they let this man retire. I don't want to be mean to him, but don't let this man wing it. He's 90. He'll be 95 soon, he said. Don't let this man wing it. Just let him either stay seated and give him a pass on having to speak, or let him retire, because he's not doing great, is he? Julia, what were your thoughts on this talk?
On Ballard's talk. So he talks about the first vision, and I noticed that he blended two versions. He blended the 1832 one where Joseph's seeking forgiveness of sins, and he's blending the, was it 38?
Yeah. Where
he sees God in Christ. So I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about Lucy Mack Smith and how she supported him. And my thoughts were like, in her biography, there's a lot of problems. Like even Brigham Young wanted them all burned.
Mm-hmm.
So because she said a lot of problematic things. Yeah.
He said, I always thought how wonderful it was when Joseph Smith came from that experience in the Sacred Grove and his mother believed him. Well, what we do know from the historical records, Joseph didn't tell anyone for years. So again, that's just not true. He talked about Jesus being our best friend, which I simultaneously found uncomfortable and wanted to make a joke about him for being friends with Tim Ballard, but couldn't quite work it out. So we'll move past that, I guess. Just generally, I don't know if there's much to say about this talk beyond it was quite a rambling.
Yeah, and he said that. He was like, I can't see.
Yeah.
That just made me really sad. Like you said, he just needs to retire.
Yeah. Other things about the session before we go any further is that we had music and the spoken word before this session. Which is the long-standing Tabernacle Choir conference, broadcast, isn't it, on a Sunday of their music, right? And they said it's in its 95th year, Which
Dang.
means that Russell M. Nelson is older than Music and the Spoken Word, which is one of the longest running radio broadcasts in America. I want to say, I think it's one of the longest continuously running radio broadcasts in America, and Russell M. Nelson is older than it.
That's
And
really
this guy is not far off. So that was just something I spotted out. And again, there was no mention that Oakes is therefore the presiding officer. Also, I had a joke I wanted to make like a couple of sessions ago, and I'll make it now because it would be wasted otherwise. They talked maybe 2 sessions ago about the choir they got. It was from Northern Utah. It was a multicultural choir from Northern Utah, which those 2 words in the same sentence don't really work together. And you looked at it, and it was about as white as the regular Tabernacle choir. So I don't get what they meant by a multicultural
Right.
Northern Utah choir. It wasn't really anything. But anyway, back to the session at hand. Let's go straight then to Emily Bell Freeman, who I believe is like an influencer of some kind, wasn't she?
Oh, I don't
Before?
know.
I think she's got like a background in. Certainly, she had like a thriving Instagram account that people would go to. I could be wrong. People tell me in the comments if I'm wrong on that.
She's got her own website.
She's
Is
got
that
her,
what you mean?
well,
She's
she's
got
got
her
her
own-
own website.
And Instagram. She's got. Yeah, I guess she is.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about her. Oh wait,
Bit of
is she the one? Is she the one that does the "Come Follow Me" things on YouTube?
Very possibly. Someone says she's a
Classes?
podcaster.
Maybe I've even watched her as a member.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, she does the "Come Follow Me" podcast.
There you go.
Yeah.
So she's a.
The "Don't Miss This" one, isn't that her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Leo's
Yeah.
just told us very kindly in the chat. Emily Freeman did the "Don't Miss This" podcast. Yep.
Yeah. I totally watched that as a member.
you go.
I knew I recognized her.
So that explains why she gave a pretty decent talk in terms of delivery
Yeah.
and speaking. Like, she spoke very well. And I noticed that, and maybe this is just the first time I noticed this, but President Oakes referred to her as President Emily Bell Freeman.
Oh.
I was like, I wonder, in the past, did they ever say Sister Emily Bell Freeman, Young Women General President? Or
I
have they
don't
always
know.
given him the title President? But it jarred me a bit. And I wonder why it jarred me, whether it was because we don't hear it very often or whether
Yeah, I
I've
don't
just
know.
noticed it for the first time. So again, there's plenty for
Yeah.
you guys to check me out, like call me out on in the comments. So should we start with this story that, and I mean, the stories in conference, you're sometimes not sure whether they are true or not, right?
Yeah.
This one feels a bit true to me because she seems like the sort of woman that would just kind of push through and be like, no, I'm going to do this.
Okay.
I get that vibe from her, so I have a feeling that this one is true. And the point she was trying to make with it was less clear, I would say. What were your thoughts on this talk?
Wait, where she hurts her leg and
Mm-hmm.
she goes on this Jesus walk. That's actually what it's called? I think she kept calling it the Jesus
Yeah.
walk.
The Jesus
In-
walk.
in
The
Jerusalem,
Jesus
I guess?
trail.
Jesus trail.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she hurts her leg, she pushes her way through. I guess her kids help her pulling the scooter or something.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I can see her doing that, but like I don't know what the tie-in is. It's like just like endure,
Mm-hmm.
like because then she talks about how like she talked about garments a lot and how people ask like why do I wear these or why do I stay on the covenant path and why do I go to the temple? Like
Which again, she comes out and she pushes on the whole garment thing, which has been in the news over the past couple of years with sisters in the church basically saying, we hate these, they give us infections, please stop making us wear them. And maybe she's coming out as the sister and being like, no, we still need to wear them because of what they signify, rather than using her position to perhaps lobby for change in garment materials and designs so that
yeah.
they don't give women infections. Perhaps. But, who am I to tell her what to do? There was a theme coming through where they're, through the whole conference, really talking about the covenant path, and they're trying to de-transactionalize it. They're trying to make it less about transactions, and covenants aren't just tick box exercises and all that sort of stuff. They're trying to make it more fluffy, more loose. When absolutely, for years, and certainly when I was growing up, it was all extremely transactional. So it seems like there's a shift going on there. A covenant is not only about a contract, although that is important. So we're not stepping away from it entirely, she said. But she was talking about, maybe all you see is a path of requirements. Well, yeah, because we're constantly being told what we have to do to stay on that path. Perhaps you hear those words and think of check boxes. Well, again, you're told about a list of things to complete. So there's a series of steps on the covenant path. Those are check boxes. You get baptized. You get the priesthood if you're a man. You go through the temple. You get sealed. So, yeah. And she does say conditions have been set and there will be expectations along the way. Any other thoughts?
Well, I think she said, I don't know if this is word perfect, but she says pace or placement on the path is not as important as progress. And I thought that was interesting because like the pace makes sense because some of us are more spiritual, I guess, than others, but placement and like, is this a women's place in the church kind of thing? That's where my thoughts went. Is
maybe.
Like,
yeah.
Like, don't fret that you're not going to ever be a bishop because you're a woman or stuff like that. I don't know. I just wondered if that's what...
But then at the same time, immediately the women should push back and go, well, then how are we to progress?
Right. Well...
Right? How are we to progress if there's nowhere else for us to go?
Yeah, that is... Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you've hit the top.
But I'm not sure I've heard about garments being spoken about, like, overtly in
I don't recall that either. But I think she brought it up at least twice in her talk.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And then she basically does lip service to the rising generation. And then she goes, you have a genuine desire to know the guide, Jesus Christ. You trust the strength of the rope that tethers us to him. You are gifted in leading others to him. Are they on any of those counts interested, strong enough, or gifted in doing those things? She's kind of ascribing attributes that don't seem to actually describe the young generation of the church who are leaving in droves.
If I tell them they're this way, then they will be this way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, but they're not. Like a lot of them don't necessarily want to know Jesus Christ because they don't feel like they see Jesus Christ in church. I know a lot of young people who are terribly switched on and have already worked out that the way that the senior brethren of the church act is not in harmony with what they've been taught about Jesus. So they're like, well, I'm not sure I want to get to know Jesus if like this is actually what he is after all of it. So, but then she does the whole, as we walk together, all of us, personal experience will lead to personal devotion. And it's this whole, it's this inclusive language trying to bring everyone along on the same journey together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's all I've got for her talk.
Yeah, that's all I got on that one too.
But she, let me just check. Was she the reason, who was the reason that, it was Cook. We'll get to Cook, but he's the reason that Jesus is so far ahead in the rankings. Let's go to Perea. Adilson de Paula Perea, first counselor in the Middle East / Africa North Area Presidency, a firm reminder that the church's presence in the Middle East is small at best. Although there is a missionary in my ward currently who's from Iraq, and her story is fascinating about how her father was a convert out of the country, went back and has just been like starting an underground church movement. It's pretty wild.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah. So he comes in pretty hard on the Russell M. Nelson shtick, this guy. What were your thoughts initially on this talk?
Well, yeah, the whole bringing up the name of the church again. He's like, it's a mouthful, but, just say it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But he told a story about giving a tour at is it a California temple?
Yeah, this is the third or fourth temple open house tour story we've had.
Okay, yeah.
Conference.
Where he's like, there was a group that I took, and one of the guys wasn't a member. Or one guy was a member and his friends weren't members. And they were like, oh, yeah, we love Virgil because he doesn't push the church in our face,
As they're stood in the celestial room of a temple.
Yeah, but I was like, that's fine and all. But like you send people on missions to shove the church. I don't know. I just was confused by his point, I guess. Like, yeah, I don't know.
No, I get it. One of the quotes he said, "When we humbly share our testimony of the Lord through our words and actions, the Holy Ghost confirms to those with real intent, open hearts, and willing minds that Jesus is indeed the Christ. But only if we tell them that feeling they're having is the Holy Ghost. That's how that works. You're going to say something to them, and like that feeling you're having, and they're like, well, yeah, I am feeling something. You're like, yeah, that's the Holy Ghost. They're like, interesting. Okay, so you get to then define the terms by which they decide that you're speaking the truth, which is a wild little bit of manipulative salesmanship that was taught to missionaries and still is taught to missionaries. Yeah. That's what we have going on there.
Yeah.
He again said something that basically never has ever been said to anyone ever. The woman lovingly replied, "I like to come here because you speak of Jesus Christ in your meetings." I mean, she might have said it, but it doesn't feel real. Doesn't pass the sniff test.
Right.
But I like the sentiment of what he was saying there. It was like people are only going to know we're Christian if when they come to our meetings we're actually focused on Jesus, which is interesting for a church that has us study the words of prophets for lessons. Right?
Yes.
That our lessons are now basically just going over general conference talks. So it's like, okay, how are they going to know when they come into our lessons that we are actually Christian and we believe in Jesus if that's not what we're talking about?
Well, that's why you have to use the full name of the church, because how else are they going to know we talk about Jesus?
Exactly, right, because otherwise I wonder whether that's why Nelson's gone on, other than his personal vendetta with Gordon B. Hinckley, it's
Right.
like the only way people will actually know we're Christians if we keep shoving the word Jesus Christ in their face, because otherwise people are going to keep just quoting me and they won't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Although Jesus is ahead in the rankings currently.
Yeah, I do feel impressed by this whole conference season where they do seem to talk about Jesus more. So, like, that's good.
Yeah. And then he says, in conclusion, let me share the lesson I learned about how to take upon us the name of Christ and testify of him by using the correct name of the church. President Nelson, God's living prophet, because, you have to add that qualifier at every possible turn, in a 2018 General Conference address titled The Correct Name of the Church, said, it is a correction. It is the commandment of the Lord. And that's at the same time he also said it was, a victory for Satan. EXMO Candle Company says that it was also to do with SEO and not wanting members to find ex-Mormon stuff. Yeah, you can't compete with a 9 times Tony Award-winning musical called The Book of Mormon for SEO spots, no matter how big your corporation is. And that reminds me, this show is sponsored by the EXMO Candle Company. But this candle is my candle. It has no name. It needs a name, so put what you think it should be called in the comments and it'll be available in a couple of weeks to order. It smells great, just saying. And I helped design it, and it's, making my studio smell lovely. Anyway, so there's nothing else here other than he talks about, like, I really watched myself to make sure I used the correct name of the church. I was like, if you're self-policing over that, either you are so good at keeping all the other commandments the church has asked of you, or you really shouldn't be worrying about that and do other things.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is the least of your concerns. When children are still being abused in the church, making sure that you're really on it with using the correct name of the church shouldn't be top of your list as a member of the church, really.
Right.
Yeah. And then he goes on about saying, oh, I, like you, used to say it quickly because it's such a mouthful, but actually I slowed down, blah, 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 like you said. So,
yeah.
There's not much here. But Quinton L. Cook, boy, oh boy, does he provide a treasure trove of information. 7 Jesus quotes, 2 Russell M. Nelson quotes. This is the opposite of his usual position as the chief brown noser of Russell M. Nelson.
Wait, so when you're putting Jesus, do you count also the Book of Mormon Jesus and the Doctrine and Covenants Jesus?
I count, yeah. So anytime they talk about the Lord, the Savior, Jesus Christ, the titles...
So the little, because he says, fear not, little flock. I think that came from the Doctrine and Covenants. Mm-hmm. But I guess since that's Jesus, even though it's Joseph.
Yeah. But if it's Joseph claiming it's the words of Jesus, that in this whole thing has got to be just as valid as Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John claiming that it's the words of Jesus, I suppose.
Okay,
we've got to keep a level playing field there with that. So he starts, though, by using this phrase, peaceable followers of Christ. Which actually, if you go back, is like an old L. Tom Perry talk. He talks about the need for peaceful followers of Christ. But it all refers back to, and he does talk about it in here, refers back to the need to be peacemakers, which is Russell M. Nelson's old talk. So that's where my prediction that he would talk about Nelson's last talk. That is his traditional role. Yeah, it's a good talk if the church would live by the standards that they set out in that talk.
Right.
Yeah. No, but it was excellent. And so... what we have seen in the past few years is Quinton L. Cook takes those talks by Russell M. Nelson, and then the next conference reaffirms them and expounds on them and that sort of thing. Seems to be his job.
Yeah.
But they started to... They've done this before. I think it was D. Todd Christofferson did it a couple of conferences ago, when they start to wrestle with the question of evil.
Yeah.
Right? They start to, and then they give up. And they go, actually, we have no answers. Bad things happen to good people on this mortal journey. And I put, right now, wrestle with this. And he moves on, talks about the devastating fires in Maui, etc. And then later on, he'll talk about it as well. What were your thoughts on this talk?
Yeah, like that whole thing where it's like, I wrote down, like, why does a just God allow bad things to happen? And then he says, we don't know. And so I wrote down, like, even though your life believing in God is sometimes indistinguishable from your life not believing in God, just believe anyway. Like,
Well, this is the quote. Church leaders are frequently asked, why does a just God allow bad things to happen, especially to good people? And why are those who are righteous and in the Lord's service not immune from such tragedies? Great question. Brilliant. Awesome. We do not know all the answers, which you should actually just read any answers. However, we do know important principles that allow us to face trials, tribulations, and adversities with faith, confidence, and a bright future that awaits each of us. So it's like, we don't have any solutions, but here's some copium to help you get through it. So here's our solution to just like sucking it up and getting on with it. Because we have no answers. He made a oblique reference to the Ukraine war. He talked about major conflicts between countries and individuals. I think that's about as close a reference as you'll get. And then
he did talk about the second edition of the Preach My Gospel.
He did, which and he said, and Russell Ballard and Russell M. Nelson have emphasized Preach My Gospel, and so I have a feeling that Ballard was probably going to talk about it this morning if he hadn't gone off script, which was my prediction.
So he just picked it up.
Yeah, so I think he picked that up, and it gets a mention that way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But also he does mention he talks about Brigham Young's. I think it might have been his only revelation, Brigham Young, in January 14th of 1847 at Winter Quarters, and it's Doctrine and Covenants 136 talking about the Exodus from Winter Quarters to Utah, and that just drove me nuts because like I hate that story. It's not faith promoting. He's having to send people back to go help them, which is referenced later by Bishop Waddell. Like I don't know, just stop talking about the. Stop talking about the pioneers.
Tell me why you don't like it. Tell me why it's not faith promoting to you.
Because Brigham Young orchestrated it to be horrible. He's like, we'll plan. Even in his planning, he was like 300 miles short, and then he like underfed them, and he took all their goods. He took like tithing or whatever that's called, consecration, and then like left them with nothing, and then said, you can rent these really bad hand carts, and you'll have to pay us back for the rest of your life. And also, most of you are going to die because we're not giving you enough food. And they had all these hand carts, and then they had their big wagons with the food on them. Like, and also one of his ex-wives, Annalisa Young, she said that it would have cost him like $50 or $60 per person to get them safely across the plains. But he didn't want to spend that. Instead, he's building mansions. I think he ended up with 3 or 4 mansions in Utah.
Now that's a familiar tale of the church having the money to help people, but instead choosing to build large, opulent buildings.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like with missionary work now. It's like, and somebody referenced it in one of the past sessions where he says, "Oh, tithing goes to help missionaries," but I haven't seen it to be the case. Like my parents spent like $40,000 to send 4 kids on missions, and the church didn't help with that.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like they have the money, they can.
And that's not tithing money anyway, because it would be local members. There's local members paying to the ward mission
they have
fund.
Missionary fund. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know why he said. Yeah. Anyway,
it's nonsense. I
hate them trying to make the pioneers a faithful thing.
And then he just like says 2 platitudes, which I've just circled and put how. He's like, all that is unfair about life can be made right through the atonement of Jesus Christ. How? Explain to me how that works.
Oh, not in this life. But
all wrongs will be righted, and we will see perfect clarity and faultless perspective and understanding. Again, how will they be righted? But you're right. It's about like, well, just wait till the next life.
Yeah, there's no way it can be this life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he talks about many do not appreciate that under his loving and comprehensive plan, those who appear to be at disadvantage through no fault of their own are not ultimately impacted. Well, that's not strictly true. He's talking about like people that have never heard of the church, etc. But if you look at people like the LGBT community who aren't, who are disadvantaged in the church through no fault of their own, they are ultimately impacted, right? So it's not exactly a comprehensive plan. And also, he's just admitted that plan allows for suffering, but they don't know why. So again, how is it comprehensive? Because there's a big gap in it called suffering that no one has an answer for. So that's a problem to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. The whole problem of evil, and like, we don't know. You can still be righteous and still follow God, but you're still going to be plagued just as much with hardships. So it really does. I don't know if they realize they're doing that, but it's like, it's not going to make any difference whether you believe in God, but believe in him anyway. That's how I'm hearing it. Like,
and to final nail in the coffin, he says, he promises that those who faithfully keep the commandments are blessed in all things in this life and are received into heaven and dwell with God in a state of never-ending happiness. But he just said that bad things happen to good people.
Right.
So how are they blessed in all things in this life if bad things happen to good people?
Right. Yeah.
And then the kicker is this, and I actually like recorded this so that we can hear him say it.
Father in heaven and his Son Jesus Christ, who is the head of his restored church, have provided us scriptures and prophets to prepare us, warn us about dangers, and give us guidance to prepare and protect us. Some directions require immediate action. Some provide protection for many years in the future. The Lord's preface to the Doctrine and Covenants, section 1, admonishes us to give heed to the words of the prophets. We didn't have revelation there was going to be a pandemic.
Prophets can see around corners, but they can't.
Yeah, I'm not one for gotcha journalism, really, but I mean, I think that's fair, right? He's like, oh, prophets guide you, just listen to them, they will protect us, they will help us. And then he's going on the Church News podcast and being like, yeah, we didn't get a revelation that COVID was going to happen. Great, cool. What use are you then in your self-proclaimed role in protecting God's children and providing warnings?
Yeah.
It's just nonsense. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else to talk about. I think we should move on to the smiley German man.
Wait, so at the very beginning, he was like, I'm going to tell the greatest short story ever told. And I was like, is he going to talk about Ernest Hemingway with the six-word story?
How does that one go? Is it baby
It's like,
shoes for sale, never worn?
Yeah. I thought he was going to reference that, but he's like, it's by Jesus. And I was like, okay, never mind.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so Hemingway, take a back seat. Jesus is on the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did think, who's this going to be? And then, no, it was Jesus.
Yeah, it was just Jesus.
Again, he gives a shout out to the LGBTQ community in this talk when he said, yeah. It was oblique, but he was like, free from the principles and rules of the culture of his youth, he could finally make his own choices without being influenced by his parents. No more guilt, and this is what I think he's referencing. He could bask in the acceptance of a like-minded community and live life on his own terms. That, in the mind of Dietrich Uchtdorf, is exactly what every LGBTQ person thinks when they come out. I think that's in his brain, that's what he thinks it is.
Oh,
what are your thoughts, Julia?
Well, I hadn't caught that, but it makes sense now. I was just thinking like in general of like-minded progressive people.
It's the words acceptance and like-minded community and life on their own terms. Those words seem almost like sort of dog whistles to that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense now.
Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but then I think he clarifies it when he starts throwing hashtags out there. Right? I'm not sure there's anything more cringy than a man of this age trying to throw hashtags out into the world.
Everyone laughed, but I don't know if that's always a good thing or not.
Well, I think he got like one of the most genuine laughs of the thing. The other genuine laugh was Alan Phillips' talk a couple of sessions ago where he said, oh, where's my son? And everyone laughed because you've got a room full of Utah parents with 12 children who have all left a child somewhere at some point. So there was a mass laugh of sympathy, right?
Yeah, that was,
Okay, what were your thoughts on this? Because I'm aware I could just run away with it otherwise, but I want to hear what notes you made.
So he talks about the prodigal son, and my thoughts, I guess, kept going to the other kid. Because the other kid, he quotes the other kid. I can't remember the exact quote, but he's like, how come you've never celebrated me? You've never killed a fatted calf for me or put a ring on my hand or whatever. And like, this guy, he's just like, oh, but you'll have everything after I die. But like that, I mean, he seems like a good dad because he's looking out for his other kid. He's just watching from a long distance, But as far as his kid that's home, I was like, I don't feel like he's a very good dad to not, and this is neither here nor there because this is like a past story of a different culture and whatever. But like, I feel like you should celebrate your kids, when they're working their butt off to help you. I don't know. I was just thinking about the other kid.
Yeah, and now the reckless child is back and people couldn't stop lavishing attention on his rebellious brother. He said, all these years, he tells his father, never once I refused to do a single thing you asked, yet in all that time you never celebrated me. And the dad's like, look, all I have is yours. And I think that there are other ways to read that. Because I wonder whether he's speaking to some inside the church who, when people come back, are like, well, hang on. How come they got to... It's like how the Amish have that thing where you go out into the world and then you make your choice, right? Yeah. It's like when people leave and then decide they're going to come back, it's like they got a chance to have that, and other people are almost slightly jealous. Like, why did they get to go out and be reckless and sin and repent? It's the same. There's a low level jealousy of converts amongst some members of the church because they got to live a different life first.
Yeah,
and low key, those members want to get to do what that convert was able to do when they weren't a member.
Yeah, it reminds me of the 11th hour parable, where it's like people are hired all day and work, and then the other people get the same pay for only working the last hour.
Yeah,
I can't remember it, but it just kind of makes me think of that. Like, just be happy with what you've got, or I don't know. I love the story of the prodigal son. It's a great story, except I didn't like the part with the brother. So
yeah.
He's talking about people coming. They should come back to church. Don't be embarrassed or ashamed. Come back anyway, kind of thing.
Yeah, he said, will I be labeled forever rejected and avoided by my former friends? Is it better that I just stay lost? Well, you won't be labeled forever rejected and avoided by your former friends if you come back, because you've already been labeled forever rejected and are being avoided by your former friends for stepping away in the first place. That's the life of anyone who steps away from the church, by and large. People will say, oh, we'll stay friends, you're always our friend, we still love you, and then how many of those people are in contact with you within 6 months?
Yeah.
That they just ghost you, right? So I like how Uchtdorf tried to use inclusive language, where he was like, it's about you and me today, it's about us. But I then started to worry that he was reaching a bit. There was also a point where he said, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ, we seek to follow his example and embrace your brothers and sisters as our friends. He didn't use the full name of the church, so go Uchtdorf for sticking it to Nelson and his rules on that one. But he says, I do not pretend that coming back is an easy thing to do. I can testify of that. It may be, in fact, the toughest choice you'll ever make. And I asked the question, Uchtdorf, how do you know that? Is there an experience in your life you're not telling us about where you legitimately left the church and then came back? I've never read it in any bio of yours. So how can you testify that coming back is easy for someone that's left, particularly someone that's left not through apathy, but who's left through genuine concerns about the church's history, about its current financial practices, its current covers up of abuse,
right?
Those sorts of things.
Right. I also feel like he's kind of making it, people who leave the church leave because they want to go and have this lifestyle where they're accepted. Not that people actually have legit reasons to leave. Like, what if this kid was being abused or mistreated in his home and wanted to leave? Like he's not giving people who leave, I don't know.
No, I hear that. Yeah. And then he starts talking like, we and the leaders of the church and the angels in heaven will all rejoice with you if you come back, all that sort of stuff. After all, we know what it's like to be a prodigal. Again, how do you know that, Uchtdorf? Like, I don't think you do know what it's like to be a prodigal in the sense that you're talking about people leaving the church. In the sense that all fall short of the glory of God, then yeah, you know what it's like to be a prodigal. But you've been talking about it specifically in the sense of people that leave the church, that you're inviting them to come back. So how do you know? I want to know. I'm going to send him an email. I'm going to ask him. I'm like, Uchtdorf, my man, what's going on? I didn't realize you'd left the church at some point in your life. Please do tell me more. And we'll see what he says. But yeah, that's it. That was it for his talk. I just found that bit a bit weird, to be honest.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, definitely a bit weird. The chat is popping off tonight. Hey everyone in the chat. Send your thoughts through. We're now going to move to this guy who I can't believe they let in front of a camera again.
I know. I was like, it's him.
Yeah, I mean, Julia, tell us who it is for those that don't know.
So he's the presiding bishopric. So that means he's over Ensign Peak, right? He's one of the only few. He's one of 6 men, I think, that know, or 4, or I think it's 6 men that know the actual income and amount of money that the church has. And he did the 60 Minutes clips. Anyway, talking about him, he couldn't tell you how big their assets were, but I don't know. It was just funny that he was giving a talk in conference.
He's this guy.
Oh yeah, you got it.
The idea that secrecy builds mistrust.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't feel it's being secret. We feel it's being confidential.
What's the difference?
The difference is, I guess it's a point of view. It's confidential in order to maintain the focus on what our purpose is and what the mission of the church is, rather than the church has X amount of money.
But don't you agree this would be a non-issue if there was more transparency?
No, because then everyone would be telling us what they wanted us to do with the money.
And I always ask, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with taking ideas and suggestions? No one can know what they should be doing with that level of wealth at all, really. So they could do with some help in knowing what to do with it. Thank you, everyone in the chat. If you could very kindly, those that can, please donate, because this video is definitely going to get demonetized now. That I showed that clip from 60 Minutes. They went after me on copyright just for uploading it to YouTube so I could put it in this. So this video is probably going to get demonetized. So the donor box link is below, and there's super chats and stuff like that. It's all greatly appreciated. But if you can't do any of those things, just subscribe and like the video. Let's move on through Waddell's talk. He talked about not having heroes. He talked about hero worship. Julia, can I ask you to read that quote? Because I think people are getting bored of my voice.
Yeah, so hero worship as a child can be fun and innocent, such as children dressing up as their favorite superheroes for Halloween. Although we admire and respect many talented and remarkable men and women for their abilities and contributions, the degree to which they are revered, if taken to an excess, can be the equivalent of the children of Israel worshiping the golden calf in the desert of Sinai. As adults, what was once innocent childhood fun can become a stumbling block when hero worship of politicians, bloggers, influencers, athletes, or musicians can cause us to look beyond the mark and lose sight of what is truly essential.
Thank you very much, Doug Vincent, for providing a fund for me to buy more jammy Dodgers. The ultimate shortbread biscuit with a jammy center. I should get sponsored by them, but alas, we're not there yet. What vloggers can you think of and politicians or wannabe politicians that have been in the news for all the wrong reasons recently, Julia?
I think on the October 10th, I think we'll see if Tim Ballard wants to obey Jesus according to his interpretation of Jesus.
Yeah.
But and Ruby Frankie too. And I'm pretty sure because it says bloggers here on your slide, but I think he says vloggers.
He says vloggers later on in.
He says that later.
Yeah.
Okay, so because I was like Ruby Frankie would definitely be on that list. But, yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is the only sort of Tim Ballard reference we're going to get in this entire conference, to be fair. But it's a pretty solid one. For him to say, look, stop worshiping. I think he's trying to stop a schism happening, if I'm honest. The church is without acknowledging the chance that it could happen, they're trying to stop a mass exodus of people. Some people who are already accusing them of being involved in child trafficking for working with the WHO and UNICEF. Still can't get my head around that. But there are active believing members of the church who are saying that the church leaders are trying to silence Tim Ballard because he's discovered that they're in on it too, because the world is one great big conspiracy. Thank you very much, Harry Henderson. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your kind donation. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, going back, he also he started the talk by talking about the handcart companies or the Exodus again. And Brigham Young was like, it's such a faith promoting story. Brigham Young was like, hey, you guys, the handcarts are stuck out there. Go help them. But in reality, he's the one that hurt them.
What do you make of the line where it says Brigham Young was surprised to learn that 2 handcart companies were still hundreds of miles from Salt Lake?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he'll say that he didn't know. Yeah, he says that he doesn't know anything about them, but these were planned out for forever in winter quarters. And I just hate everything about this story of the handcarts. And then my thoughts are not on Tim Ballard until later when he references the vloggers. But I was like, why is he? What members are holding up pioneer ancestors as heroes and idol worshiping them? But that's not what he was talking about. He was talking about more, contemporary.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Because of course he doesn't want us to hero worship Ephraim Hanks. But I don't think anyone was in danger of doing so necessarily. Right, of course, hero worshipping Russell M. Nelson, as this conference guide proves, because even though Jesus is ahead in the rankings, that many quotes of Nelson's is still obscene, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's massive. So,
but I also wish you would have tallied other general authorities that were quoted, because they're all kind of quoting each other.
Oakes got a fair few, I think, because people realize he's going to be the next prophet. He got a fair few. I could go back and do some tallies, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just think that's
Maxwell's been quoted twice now, which is weird.
Oh, that is weird.
It is weird.
I don't remember
that. Who else? Monson got quoted once during this conference, and Gordon B. Hinckley's been quoted twice.
Oh yeah, but I mean, also because I think people quoted Bednar, people have quoted Oakes, like you said. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's other ones.
Holland got quite a bit because he's not there in person, so I think they're trying to include him by putting him.
That surprised me that he wasn't there, but you said he's still recovering, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's still recovering at home. He's out of hospital now, but
Yeah, I feel like he disappeared right before he was supposed to give his speech at that university.
Yeah. Then his wife died. Then he got
Yeah.
sick again. And I mean, I think there's some studies on like how quickly you can pass away once your spouse dies. Like it can greatly
especially for the
reduce your
men,
life
'cause
expectancy.
Yeah, I think statistically men don't survive as long after their wife has died.
Yeah, women make better widows than men make widowers.
Although it's not true for Richard G. Scott, who was single for like 15 years, or I think that was how long after his wife died.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was.
Someone just said someone just said in the chat, your mum got quoted. Either they're just making your mum joke, which it's 2005 again, clearly, or my mother wasn't quoted in this conference. She's a wise and intelligent woman, but she wasn't quoted in conference, I don't believe. Anyway, back to Mr. Waddell, who doesn't know the difference between sacred. Apparently, he doesn't know the difference between obedience and heroism either. He says, in a perfect act of obedience and commitment, Jesus Christ completed the supreme heroic act in all of creation, culminating in his glorious resurrection. He's there conflating obedience with heroism. So it's this subtle thing to the members of like, oh, so if you're just obedient to us, then you'll be fine. Please, just be obedient to us. And that's a heroic thing to do. He quoted Oakes, but kissed Oakes a bit.
Well, he also says, I think this is an exact quote. He says, no matter what questions you have, the answers can be found in studying the life of Jesus Christ. Yeah. Again, I don't know how.
Yeah, that's a Nelson quote.
Oh,
but
he's
again, he's quoting Nelson. Whatever
okay,
questions or problems you have, the answer is always found in the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. Well, it isn't, because Jesus didn't speak to the struggle of the LGBTQ community, did he?
Yeah, or like marriage, or like, I don't think he talked about that. I don't think he talked about a whole bunch of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff he didn't talk about.
Right.
He didn't talk about, it wasn't until Paul was speaking to people that the idea of women in the priesthood was ever addressed. The teachings of Christ, the life of Christ, doesn't address whether women can be part of the clergy or not.
Right, yeah.
So it's not the be all and end all. Then we get another Maxwell quote in this talk. He talks about there was a Maxwell quote on someone's wall: if you have not chosen the kingdom of God first, it will in the end make no difference what you have chosen instead. That's ominous. But, and this is why I want to really call out Waddell here. Did you notice the quote he said about choosing Jesus Christ, the King of Kings, that we choose the kingdom of God? Any other choice is the equivalent of choosing the arm of flesh or a golden calf, which will ultimately fail. Why does the church choose money time and time again?
Ew.
Right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And thank you to the Scotty's Mum Experience O'Brien for a lovely donation. Thank you very much.
Well, another thing that I was thinking about, not on this lines of money, but on the lines of Jesus, where it's like only our interpretation of Jesus. Like I still go to church. Like I attend a progressive church here in town, and like they just focus on like what he's actually saying. They're not making stuff up. Like well, I feel like the church does that. The church is like, Jesus doesn't like, I don't know. They just want us to follow their interpretation of Jesus, and not like listening to Dan McClellan or all these other Bible scholars. It's like, he didn't actually say any of those things that the church pushes. Anyway, that's where my thoughts went.
No, and the part about the vloggers just come up.
I've
just written that quote down where it says, for us on our journey back to the presence of God, our promised land, it's not the politician, the musician, the athlete, or the vlogger that is the issue, but rather choosing to allow them to become the primary objects of our attention and focus, supplanting our Savior and Redeemer. I've written next to it, stop looking at the trial. Stop following the trial, people. I'm surprised they haven't out and out called for a social media fast yet. I know some Mormons have been doing one in the week leading up to conference, but I'm not aware whether that was officially sanctioned or not. Maybe they've just chosen to do that themselves.
Have you done a segment on that? Because the weekend that he asked everyone to do that, I think he only did it one time. It was the weekend that his daughter or granddaughter was
his daughter was involved in something.
Right, child abuse or something like that. Yeah, so, that was funny. And
I haven't done a segment on that yet.
Yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff.
And then there's an interesting final quote here. He says, no teacher has shown more courage. No leader has shown more courage. No humanitarian more kindness. No physician has cured more disease. And no artist has been more creative than Jesus Christ. That last bit, when I think of Jesus Christ, I don't think of the creative artist.
Right.
Many things I think of, but not the creative artist. I don't know. That's just a need to put Jesus in the superlative of any category,
Right.
which he isn't always. It's strange.
Yeah.
Anyway, the final talk, Henry B. Crying, as he's affectionately known by many. What were your thoughts on this talk? Because I'm aware I'm just rambling.
So he talks about following the Spirit and stuff, and then I don't know why he does this. I don't think this is a faith promoting story, but he talks about Nephi sneaking out at night, dressing up as a man, cutting off his head, and taking his book because he was following the Spirit. Like, that's not a faith promoting story. Anyway, I was annoyed that he told it.
And it's such a flawed story, because it's better for one man perish than an entire nation dwindle in unbelief. Then Nephi gets shown a vision, not too long after, or before. I can't remember when he gets shown a vision. But anyway, contemporaneously, he gets shown a vision whereby an entire nation dwindles in unbelief. Regardless, the Nephites all get wiped out. He sees it happen. So at what point is he going, I just murdered a man because you said it would stop a nation dwindling in unbelief, and it literally didn't help. So what's going on?
Yeah.
What is that as a level of cognitive dissonance for Nephi to have to deal with?
Right.
I really liked how and this makes me think that Henry B. Iring is aware of his own mortality and possibly might die soon. I think, unfortunately, at this point, with these guys being as they are, it is a race against time as to who's going to die first. Nelson, Iring, Holland, Ballard. I think those are like the four most sickly or aged in the group, and it'll be one of those four that's probably going to go first. They're all in their 90s apart from Holland, but Holland is desperately unwell. But Henry B. Iring, well, hang on, let's go here first. My beloved brothers and sisters, in this conference we have been blessed with an outpouring of revelation. What revelation? He didn't point to any specifically. I can't actually think of any that we were given. Nothing new was revealed.
Yeah.
A lot of old ground was retrod, but I can't think of anything new that was revealed. Anyway, let's have him tell us.
This message today is a brief letter to my descendants that might help them when I am not with them in the exciting days ahead.
Yeah, that's him being like, see y'all, I'm probably going to die soon. So I want to get my last sort of thing out there. Thank you very much to Luke Harmuth for your kind donation. He says, we say prophets are expanding canon, but it really is expanding apocrypha, where many things said are good for spiritual growth, but lots also incorrect. Yeah, that's a fair point. What's your thought on Iring almost declaring his impending passing?
I hadn't caught. Well, I mean, I knew that he said that, but I didn't think about it in the terms of him dying. But that's super interesting. Maybe he knows that he's gonna kick it.
I mean, Ballard's talk kind of spoke of like, this is my last one.
Oh, you think that's what he was saying? Because like I don't know how he can keep going, because he can't read the teleprompter, and he was very clear about that. And then I don't know, poor guy. But like Iring seems acts healthy, but like
well, someone's just said, I think he's actually unwell behind it all, and I think his wife is quite unwell. Ruth Heath says it's going to be a domino rally of death and then Bednar. I think so, and what a church that will be, with Bednar at its helm.
But Oaks is fine, right? He's not sick.
I think Oaks is fine.
Right? Is he the next in line for like? I worry about him taking over as prophet.
Thank you very much, Richard, for your donation. Thank you kindly. Anthony Ambrose says, big shout out. Anthony says, all this is elder abuse. I think that's a fair comment. He also made a point earlier about the church and the changes that were made to SEO and whatnot with the name change of the church. He was there at the time, so he's got some insights there. Sorry. Yeah, I think it's going to definitely be a race to the bottom, and Uchtdorf and Bednar are like in primed position to become prophets at some point. It just depends how long Oaks lasts. Yeah, but can you imagine the Tim Ballard faction of the church if Uchtdorf becomes prophet? Right, they'll just be driven away because he'll be too nice. Although, his talk was all right. Generally, his talk was fine. Any other thoughts on what Ballard had to on what Iring had to say?
Well, I feel like Iring was saying. I feel like he kind of had this thing where it's like, you come back, feel the Spirit. But if you don't understand, if you don't think you're feeling the Spirit, it's okay. He's still there. You just can't feel it. And like, I feel like that's kind of happened a lot this session. It's like, you're going to be happier in the church, but if you don't notice, or like, if you're going to feel the Spirit more in the church, but sometimes you won't notice him, you're going to not, bad things won't happen to you, but they will. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of this double.
It's again dancing around that whole bad stuff's going to happen, and we can't really explain why that's acceptable. Right.
But and he also talked about, he's like, if your motives are selfish, you're going to have a hard time feeling the Spirit. Which I was like, why would someone have selfish motives to want the Spirit? I don't know. That was confusing to me. Like,
absolutely.
Isn't the Spirit supposed to help you testify of God and like be notified if you're gonna? And
if that's what you want, isn't that then selfish?
Right. I don't know. I thought that was really weird. Yeah. He was like, you have to want it for the right reasons, and I was like, what? Wow.
Which happened to align with their reasons. And the key is to want what the Savior wants, which case throws the agency argument under the bus, essentially. He says, go on.
I was going to say, he also told that story that I didn't know if I made sense of it, but the mom calls him and she was really stressed because she was worried about her daughter. And then Iring calls the home teachers, but the home teachers are like, oh yeah, we were already felt impressed by the Spirit to go visit her because something, like she was going to do something. I don't think he ever said what was going to happen or what did happen. I think he just kind of skipped over that part.
Yeah, he kept referring to her situation.
Yeah, he didn't say what it was though.
It was a situation in which she would make choices that would bring sadness and misery. Could be abortion. Could
drinking
be she
coffee.
was about to drink coffee. Any of these things. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It could be something as benign, but it's plugged as dramatic so that it's a big thing. And then he just reaffirms a load of things, including President Russell M. Nelson is the prophet of God for all the earth. And that was it. It wasn't really much else, unless there's something I've missed in that talk that you've got notes on there, Julia.
No, I think that was pretty much it. But so there was one woman speaking this session, right? Emily Bell?
Yep.
So there's been 3 so far out of the 25 speakers.
Yes. That's my prediction, is that there would be 3 female speakers. There's also been one woman praying.
Oh, okay, so there's not going to be any next.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't think so. We'll wait and see.
They hit their quota. They're like, we've got 3.
We've got 3. That's enough. That's enough. A one woman praying, which women have been allowed to pray since 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
They've been allowed to pray in conference. So, yeah.
Wait,
we're slowly including them.
So I feel like it's different every time I watch conference. But when do they normally announce temples? Is it the very last?
Right at the end.
Right at the end. Okay.
It'll probably be part of Russell M. Nelson's video recorded message.
Oh, he did it. Oh,
he's going to do a video recorded message from his bed because he's fell and hurt his back, and he's 99. So
Wow, it's from his bed. It's not from like months ago.
Well, he said he can't sit, and he injured himself 3 weeks ago. So I reckon he's going to be sat.
Dang. Okay.
Or laying supine. Which makes me wonder, what was Rulon Jeffs' last address look like? I tried to find it online just to see if I could get a similar image, but he's very much a deathbed prophet at this point, it would seem. If he can't even get out of bed because he's fallen and injured himself, he's sprightly and everything, but like his doctor said to him on the Facebook post that he put out, it doesn't bode well for 99-year-olds who fall and hurt their backs.
Right.
We've got some encouragement from Jacob Berg. Thank you kindly. Keep it up. One more session to go. Yes, one more session to go. Hopefully we'll make it through. But yeah, I think we all wait and see what temples will be announced. You'll find out right here. As soon as the conference is over, we'll be going live, and I will be telling you exactly where the temples are at. I'll be telling you who won Jesus, Joe, and Russell, and any surprises that come our way in the meantime. So cheers for joining me, Julia. Thank you for suffering through conference. I'll let you put together your little thing now, your roundup. Everyone go check that out on Instagram. And I will see you all in, about 3 hours or so.
Yeah.
So have a great evening, everybody. Like, subscribe, do all the nice, fun stuff that helps keep the channel alive. And I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.